Podcasting. Anyone ever thought about having a podcast? Where do I start? Where do I begin? Here's a tip for you, something that I use, Anchor. Anchor is the easiest way to make a podcast. It is absolutely free, and they provide all the creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your computer, phone, tablet, whatever device you have. It is super convenient, and Anchor will even distribute your podcast for you. Your podcast can be on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Grow your listeners and get as many people as possible to listen to your podcast. Everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. Let's do it.
Shows are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Welcome to the Edventures in Tech podcast, talking the latest tips and trends in educational technology to innovate and engage your students. Here are your hosts, Andrew and Dan.
Hello there once again. Welcome to episode 28 of season 2 of the Adventures in Tech podcast.
Is that where we are now?
I can't. I'm Andrew.
I'm Dan.
Oh, yeah, and we're off to a great start, obviously, off the rails. But anyways, if you like the content, like us, help us out by providing feedback and a rating on wherever you get you down and download your podcast from. We greatly appreciate your support. It has definitely been a busy time of year, Dan. Before we get into classroom updates, you're off. You're tired.
You're right. It is a busy time of year. November, December, it all
blends together. It's the holidays. We get it.
A whole mess of craziness.
Once Halloween starts, it's just like, gotta go.
Yep.
It's like a marathon. But speaking of which, Dan ran 26.2 miles.
I did.
You ran 26.2 miles, and I flew 1,322.7 miles this past weekend. Fun times.
That's it.
You ran, and I flew. You probably could have run where I was anyway.
That's true, but it
would have taken a while. All right, so NiceGate's coming up. We're excited. NiceGate, the annual NiceGate conference in Rochester. It's called Convening. Kicks off November 19th. 5 days away. If you haven't joined NiceGate, please, it's free. Free 99. Please log in, join. They have all kinds of free PD offerings. They send you a newsletter of kind of what's happening in ed tech. They offer courses, trainings, all over the state. So it's definitely something to check out. Nicegate.org, NYSCATE.org. So, and then, of course,
Ditch Summit.
Coming
December 12th to January 6th.
So, you know what's interesting, and we've had Matt, we have talked and hung out with him and had him offer a lot of speaking, I can't even talk today. Keynotes and, just a lot of PD courses, 1 hour sessions. He's done all that. But a lot of people are like, oh, he just thinks homework is not purposeful. But or the textbooks are not purposeful, I should say. And that's like, his first book, Ditch That Textbook. But DITCH is more of an acronym. And I don't think people understood that. It's just so DITCH is the approach that Matt kind of has, adopted to teaching and learning that he used in his own classroom. So the D stands for different, making your class unique from every other class students attend. I is innovative, trying new teaching techniques to engage students. T, tech-laden, adding tech in meaningful ways to improve learning. C, creative, creating unique ideas that have value in the classroom. And H, hands-on, letting students learn by doing instead of telling them. So I don't think a lot of people are like, oh, we don't need textbooks anymore.
Right.
That's not, it's just an acronym. So I don't think we had ever gone over that in 20-something episodes. I don't think we had talked about that. So you learn something new every day.
That's it. We may just need to ditch that podcast.
There you go. Well, he also brought his podcast back.
I know. Exactly.
So on his own. He missed it. He missed podcasting. So Ditch Summit, if you haven't registered, make sure you ditchsummit.com, as Dan had mentioned, and you can register. It's free. Kicks off December 12th, so about 30 days away. And you can definitely check out tons of presentations. I think there'll be over 80-plus presentation. So PD the best way in your couch, PJs with hot cocoa, coffee, and on your own time, whatever works for you. All right. So let's talk classroom updates. So last week we actually had a conference day.
We did.
Obviously with election day, a lot of the schools across the country are closed as they are polling places. And we had the opportunity to present to secondary staff members and really talk about pushing one-to-one and adopting, I don't want to say new, but adapting our pedagogical process to reach more of our learners.
And I think, what we were trying to get across is good pedagogy is good pedagogy.
Correct.
So, we're not telling people with technology to abandon what works in the classroom.
Nope.
But it's more of a mindset shift of really being aware that your digital space is just as important as the physical space in your classroom, both for the learning of the students, but also for the wellness of the students as well. So, as we look at instructional design, I think it's very important for teachers, with students having access to all these devices and everything at their fingertips, being able to essentially clone your classroom in your digital space can really help reach all learners.
Yeah, and streamlining that information to do just that is key, really, because if you're not providing the opportunities for the students to learn outside of the classroom walls, what will happen is they will find YouTube or another method that will help them understand that concept that you are presenting, which it may not be the way you wanted it to be, the way you taught it. So it could lead to more confusion, more understanding. But if it's a repertoire just of tools that you're providing, it's going to be beneficial for the student in the long run.
Exactly.
So, hey, did you see my meme I put in?
I did.
All right. So everybody.
Well, I saw it because I'm just sitting here and I just hear snicker, and the snickering coming from my left, and so I had to scroll down the page.
And we'll post it. So it's when I started editing my podcast episode, I was Grogu, right? Or Baby Yoda, a lot of people call him. And when I finished editing my podcast episode, I am now Yoda.
But what's even funnier, so you don't edit.
Yeah, maybe I should edit a little bit. Come on, every time you make me do some music, I do have some editing down.
A little bit.
I do.
We usually just let it go.
We do. It's pretty, whatever off the rails flies, that's it. We're not going to edit too much. It's more fun that way. All right, so let's talk some news, right? So weekly windup and how to add a document summary in Google Docs. So I think we touched on this a little bit, right? But it's something new. So when you go to Google Docs, it was introduced earlier this year, and it basically is coupled with the outline with the headings that we talked about, I think, last week, right?
Yeah,
with the headings.
I think so.
But now you can just use the summary alone if you prefer. So sometimes summarizing those documents can be very helpful to the readers. You get a brief overview and call out the important points. You don't have to include this in the content because you just can add that document summary. And to do that, it's basically at the top left. You should have that icon, right, outside the margin of your document, right? Margins, page list. We talked about that as well. And if you don't see it for some reason, just select View, Show Document Outline to display it.
And, this just goes back to, focusing on the digital space. If you're providing materials for students that are Google Docs that are meant to be accessed in the digital space, you should use the tools there that make it more accessible for more students. So, as we mentioned last week, taking those Google Docs and going pageless so we don't have to worry about page breaks as you're inserting tables and creating those collaborative experiences, but also to put in an outline so students can freely skip around the document to get to the points where they need to without having to endlessly scroll and scroll and scroll.
Yeah, and the summary part, I don't think we've really ever used. But it's basically an overview of what the document's going to have, and then right underneath that will be the outline where you put your headings in where they can then just click and go right to that part, which is great as we started talking about in our sessions last week, putting those readings and the PDF readings all onto one,
right.
Reading 1, reading 2, reading 3, reading 4. Your summary could be, these are all the readings that are pertaining to such and such topic. So it's something that can help students become more aware and organized if you use that document summary in Google Docs. Canva Whiteboards. Become a big fan of Canva. A lot of people are getting into it. And Canva really, the whiteboards have a ton of possibilities because they're infinite whiteboards.
Right.
So it's that real-time collaboration that will be great because the whiteboards is how they're going to kind of empower everyone to design anything. And we saw that as we went from remote to hybrid, and now we're back in person. You can need bigger space. You can have project planning, brainstorming. So the new whiteboards in Canva are making it fun and easy to collaborate with your students.
And you think about that as working in the digital space with your students, even if, the blended environment in the classroom, as you're going and you're collaborating and you're sharing information, that infinite canvas can really be useful as students start developing inquiries and generating ideas and making connections and bringing it all together. I remember being in the classroom and then trying to fit everything into like a smart notebook and then hitting extend page, extend page, extend page, and it loses its flow. So the idea of being able to zoom in, zoom out, have that infinite workspace to add things into it, do some text on top of it, it really is, it really works in the moment.
And they have a ton of templates, so you don't get overwhelmed about it. They have a ton of content in the library already. So to map out those ideas, it's definitely already in there. You can assign it into Google Classroom if you want it as a template, small group work. You can make a couple of them. So definitely something to check out is Canva's Infinite Whiteboards.
Exactly.
All right, let's see. So let's talk Edpuzzle. This is for our ELL.
Hola.
Yeah, say hola to Edpuzzle in Spanish. So your favorite platform for video learning is now easier to use than ever before in your own language. So it's for all Spanish speakers as of now. And you can have the original video lessons in Spanish. And I'm assuming it's coming with other languages, but right now it's just in Spanish. So we wanted to make sure we touched on that. All right, moving right along. We talked about how Edpuzzle can become live, right? In an online class. We already touched on that because they now have the screen recording tool. Kind of just morphed into that with our conversation last week. So we'll put the notes in if you want to read the notes about Edpuzzle and how you can turn your live class into an engaging activity. But I think we're gonna go past that because we already kind of talked about it. Same thing with Canva. So go ahead.
No, I was just going to say Edpuzzle is adding in, just another feature for just putting your screen recordings right into Edpuzzle without having to upload something you create before, which is a nice little addition.
Yeah.
But if you're used to making your screen recordings in another tool, you can still upload those into Edpuzzle as well.
Yeah. The other thing that kind of got a refresh right recently is BookCreator. So some people use BookCreator. I think you get one free. I always think it's one free, right? You get one free book per year. There are obviously pricing features that will add to it, but your BookCreator online allows you to basically kind of add more of what you're looking to be creative with in the regards, let's say, GIFs and animated emojis, stickers, audio, video. You can add all of that into your book right now via BookCreator, multimedia feedback. So just something, if you are a fan of BookCreator, definitely check out their updates as far as how you can utilize that in your classroom, because we know that the most influential factor in improving student achievement is feedback. So if they are using BookCreator, providing feedback will definitely help the students as well.
All right. So moving along, I guess we're going to look a little bit more about the next evolution of collaboration for Google Workspace.
Yeah. So Smart Canvas, right? I think we kind of touched a little bit about this. A lot of people they don't understand the chips.
Right.
And when we talk about the smart chips, it's basically recommending files and meetings and people, and it just makes it, you just simply type @ to see the list of recommended people, files, or meetings that you want to tag. So it's trying to make things just more efficient in your workflow. It's really what it comes down to. Because what will happen is if you type @ and then you don't have to go, let me find the link to this doc. Let me hit share, make sure my settings are updated, copy the link, put it in, highlight over it, and rename it, right? So it's really to make it a more seamless experience and save you time and become more efficient.
I mean, I like what Google's doing into that collaborative space with its smart chips. I mean, it started out a while ago where you can just search for your drive in your browser, and now everything is integrating, so you don't have to jump around as you're working on something. If I'm collaborating in a doc and I need to attach a file to it, I can just hit the @ symbol, start typing the name of the file, and it's automatically going to go linked right into my document. If I want to include another person in there, I can just put @ and start typing that person's name, and it will put their contact information right there in my document.
The most important part with this feature, you have to name your documents. Can't have untitled documents.
Not a lot of untitled documents.
So we talk about, maybe that's something we should talk about, is drive organization on the next episode, because I get it. We all do it. We're all guilty at times of just starting either docs.new or, new Google, however you create your Google Docs. But if they are just unnamed document, you're never going to be able to use Smart Chips. So name it whatever you want to name it, okay? But name it. I guess that's pretty much all I can say. That's the advice that we have. And maybe I'll make notes. We'll definitely talk about maybe organizing your Google Drive for success. How's that?
Sounds daunting.
Daunting. Yeah, I mean, it is. You have to name your document, step one. But, okay. So this article I thought was very interesting, and we've kind of talked about this.
I think we have, but I think it's always good to remind, especially, as we go through the weekly updates and we start talking about all these different tools.
Correct. Right.
I think it's, look at all these things, but, just stop throwing tech into classrooms without a purpose.
Yeah. So we know the use of ed tech products in schools has obviously dramatically risen over the last few years. Teachers, have all stepped out of their comfort zones to use products to engage students. Now, again, it's a matter of what works for your classroom. Don't just do it because it's the new shiny toy. But the wide range of skills and philosophies that educators are using technology to enhance student learning. Again, that's the biggest thing. You're using tech, not just use the tech, but it's because you got to use it for the purpose. And we know that, when you enhance the student learning, we know teachers don't always have that proper support to develop the lessons that integrate technology, but that's why you call Dan and myself, right? So technology is completely changing very rapidly, and the use of technology with the one-to-one districts and just students in general, it's becoming more commonplace and sophisticated overall in educational settings. So really, how do teachers effectively harness technology to benefit student learning? And a second question to that, or a follow-up, I should say, is what can principals, administration, district leaders do to support teachers in those efforts?
That's definitely a thing to follow up with, because that's really going to make a long-term difference in the learning of the students, is creating that culture in a building where there's innovation that is supported and happening. And, you think about that ed tech, there's a lot of different varieties of ed tech that's out there. But what we've been seeing, and what I think is most promising, is how they're really combining a lot of different tools for student creativity and collaboration.
Right.
So I like the way that ed tech is moving into, as if you've listened to us at all, you probably know we want to empower students to be creators and not consumers, that they're making these tools more based on creativity, allowing for students to take an original thought and idea and put it into play with original content. So, looking at the ed tech that you want to start integrating, is the purpose going to enhance the learning environment of the students? And then it's something worth exploring. And then also don't be afraid to fail with it.
Right. First attempt in learning.
Yep.
That's exactly right. Things are not going to go perfect the first time, maybe not even the second time or third time. But the more you
We've been doing this podcast, 26 times?
28.
28. See,
28
we're
times.
Far from perfect.
Still failing all the time. I don't edit. Dan says, I'm just totally, going off the rails, and I don't do what I'm supposed to do, is what he's basically insinuating.
I was not saying that. I said I was enjoying the free-form, non-edited.
Free-form, non-edited, got it. But we do have show notes, and we do have a pre-podcast meeting, as we clearly told the audience last week.
We do.
But really, what it comes down to is you focus on what's best for students. So when you're thinking about utilizing that technology, as Dan had just mentioned, the students have to be at the forefront in all the decisions that we make, right? So that is the most important thing. If a student comes to class without their Chromebook or whatever, charged and ready for use, they're not seeing the value in what they're using that technology for. So that's kind of, granted, they need to have a responsibility, but we got to make sure that we're focused on what's best for students. Mm-hmm. As we just said about creating, if it's something that's allowing them to create, that technology is having meaningful learning through an interactive activity, they're going to be prepared for class with things ready to go. If they don't see the value, and that goes for teachers as well, they're not going to put the effort in to make sure that they are prepared. So it's so important to look at, first, obviously, curriculum and standards, and find the ways that technology naturally is a part of what your outcomes and your goals are. What is your end result? Is this something that a student can do with paper? Am I using it just because it's, okay, I want to, just substitution level of SAMR? Or am I really outperforming what the outcome and goal is to give students that flexibility to be creative in their learning? So when we talk about that, we're going to wrap that up. But just keep that in the back of your mind. When you need some support with that, there's always something that can be done. And at the forefront, again, is to focus on what's best for students.
Exactly.
All right. I do want to talk about Genius Hour, but not today. We're not
Okay, I was just thinking about that. I might have to.
Well, that's a long conversation. That'll be on the show notes to do another thing. And I think we do need to kind of talk about Genius Hour in 20 time. We did talk about that on a previous episode, so to a degree, but a lot of people don't understand what Genius Hour in 20 time is. And we have AJ Giuliano wrote a great article that we'll talk about. I know that we did talk about PBL.
We did.
And not PB&J. So, as far as project-based learning, when people start thinking project, the first word they hear, what is the first thought that comes to mind, Dan?
With what? Project?
Yeah. What do they think? When they hear project-based learning, what are they thinking?
I think they're usually thinking I teach something and then they make something.
Right. Or it's going to take forever.
That too.
Right? It's a unit-long project-based learning experience, 6 to 8 weeks, right? So you got everything. You're jumping in with both feet. The action plan set. Mini lessons are ready. Student conferencing's in place. You launch with excitement, right? And then typically between weeks 2 to 5 of a PBL unit, students can struggle with that sustained inquiry. And then it just becomes into a group chat, and excitement fades, and urgency doesn't pick up, until there's just a few days left. Kind of like, procrastination. We're good at that too, Dan.
We are, but, sometimes, and I think this is a good thing to discuss, is there's so much out there, and it is overwhelming. And I recognize it's overwhelming because there's so many good ideas, and it's like, oh, I would love for, to have a completely project-based curriculum where my students are constantly immersed and engaged. And, in reality, I'd love to see that side of the rainbow and be there too.
Agreed.
But it's just not practical on all occasions. But I think when it comes down to PBL and we talk about student-centered learning and student choice, and everything all has something behind it, and that is the student driving the instruction and the inquiry. So I think, it always takes me back to that acronym KISS, K-I-S-S, keep it simple. Usually when I'm referring to myself, it's stupid. Keep it, I tell myself, keep it simple, stupid, and really keep it simple. Provide opportunities for student choice, for multiple means of engagement and multiple means of representation. Just look at UDL and provide those opportunities here and there, and that's going to help build your capacity in pushing forward project-based learning activities. It's going to increase student engagement, choice, productivity, creativity, collaboration, if you provide opportunities for students to develop inquiries and see them out for an authentic audience. That could be something that's 6 to 8 weeks long. That could be something that's 60 to 80 minutes long.
Right. And I think that's where people get in that lull of the slump is it's all about how you structure the unit itself. And you want to ensure that it is set in that way that promotes that choice and creativity that you're just elaborating to. You got to scaffold those PBL opportunities for the students to own the process as well. Too often the scaffolding was us, the teacher, whatever, telling them what to do, right? Most of the project-based learning, would in a, the older format is you'd teach them about a content, you'd have them demonstrate it in various ways and give them an end of the unit project, but that's very much like recipe-like. So that's how they'd start to handle things. They would go step by step by step by step. If you enter the creativity and promote choice with choice boards and everything, it's going to be much more dynamic. You want to make it student-centered, which then will lead the students to acquire deeper knowledge through that active exploration, creativity, communication, collaboration. It's going to really have them look at real world challenges, problems, all that. That's all going to get into that, which will make PBL more beneficial and hopefully get you out of those lulls or those slumps of a project-based learning, curriculum, for a project that you're doing in your curriculum.
Like I say, if you want to keep it simple, PBL for every classroom, as AJ Giuliani says, choose content, then give choice. Give students time to research, understand the topic, develop, and then create something at the end. And also, keeping that in mind, it can help inform your instruction in the moment. Thinking of students being able to creatively defend an argument or present an argument. I was in a classroom the other day, and we were having a discussion where students had a lot of varying different viewpoints on the topic at hand. And, instead of I just off the cuff, I'm like, all right, here's a moment here that I have to capitalize because the students are getting engaged, but certain students' voices are being lost. So immediately I kind of pivoted my lesson, stopped, broke up the class into the different viewpoints into four corners of the room, had them meet together as a group, come up with a basic argument why they thought they're to defend their side of it, come out to the middle, present, and then do a little walking debate. If someone's mind changed, they walk to another corner, then they walk to another corner. And at the end, we actually came to a genuine understanding and a whole revised conclusion of what they were debating about. So it was cool keeping it in the moment. And it kind of goes back to, those foundations of UDL and project-based learning is allowing students to develop an inquiry and then see it through. They have questions, but oftentimes we answer them for them without them taking, an extra 10, 15, 20 minutes out of your class time for them to generate an understanding through a productive conversation.
Right, and that's where the reflection comes, because the reflection will continue that learning well after the so-called project has been completed. The final product is never the end of the learning experience. Rather, it's scaffolding and preparing for the next learning experience. And, the way he wraps up everything when we're talking about is you don't just teach what you know, you teach what you're learning, right? So when you're starting students on a journey with a PBL learning sprint, the journey is where the travel is just as important as the destination, where you are getting that, right? So the goal is to have the students, right, document, share, create, collaborate, and teach all while they are learning. And that will also enable constant reflection and dialogue to take place between you as the educator, as well as the students, the audience, and everything. And that's what makes PBL so authentic.
And, building upon what you said, it then it doesn't just make the teacher's voice the only voice in the classroom.
Right.
We see the student voice being empowered, which then is, good for the emotional well-being of the students in your class because they feel valued and recognized. And that their opinions and thoughts are definitely important to the conversation.
Right. They're valued. So, as you think about PBL and PBL sprints, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Obviously, that is what we are here for. I think before we, go off the rails, I think we're going to wrap up. Right, Dan? Do you have anything else?
I was just looking, and I think our other discussion points are better off for a later date.
A little lengthy, I think, between the 20 time. And that's the thing that we'll talk about is Genius Hour and 20 time is kind of embedded within PBL.
I think it's all, it's
all the same.
It's all the same. It's really, a lot of different names to a lot of different processes. We've talked about PBL, we've talked about Genius Hour, we've talked about design thinking. It's all the similar philosophy. It's all a constructivist approach to education where we're empowering students to really take ownership of what they're doing and be the driving force of the classroom and not just a willing follower. So in other words, they're being creators and not consumers.
Correct. Yep.
Done.
That's it. There's your mic drop moment of the day, right? So as always, please, if you have questions, reach out. We thank you all for your support. Listen on the platforms, leaving us reviews. Tech hard, work smart, live an adventure. Till next time.
Find Andrew on all socials at A Nicola Tech and Dan at WCSD Tech DR.